Starting my agency was easy, but scaling it to become a multi-million-dollar company, well, I didn't think that would take 7 years. So, as a 19-year-old kid with less than $200 to my name and barely graduated high school, I would be lying to you if I told you that I was very confident starting my advertising agency, considering I never went to university. I had zero advertising experience when I started. And you can probably relate to this, but when you say you're starting a business in something that you have absolutely no background in, you experience this wonderful thing called imposter syndrome. It's that feeling of being a fraud because you're offering a service or you're selling something that you don't yet fully feel qualified to offer or to sell. And that's where this wonderful old saying of fake it till you make it comes from. But I absolutely detest the, in my opinion, highly toxic mindset of fake it till you make it, because I think that the truth is that imposter syndrome is not some rite of passage that you have to endure. It's not a badge of honor. It's not a symptom. It's more so a sense of disconnection from your truth, from your worth, from the reality that you belong where you are. And so here's the thing. Imposter syndrome doesn't disappear as you become more successful. It evolves. And when I was just starting my agency, there's these whispers in my head. It's sort of this whisperous voice of doubt. And it would say things like, who do you think you are starting an advertising agency when you have absolutely no experience? Taylor, who's going to trust you? Who's going to pay you when you have no testimonials, you have no case studies, you have no degree, you got no background, you never went to school for this? And those whispers, those relentless whispers, the whispers of self-doubt, they just evolve because some years later, all of a sudden now the agency that I have is doing millions of dollars. It's recognized as being one of the great agencies in the industry. But yet there's this funny voice that's still there. It's this little devilish voice. And it says, Taylor, okay, you got this company and it's generating some good money now, but can you actually sustain this? Are you sure you can actually build this business in a way where it doesn't fall apart? Do you have what it takes to build a good team that can run this business without you? There's all sorts of whispers. And so imposter syndrome is just a sort of test of how deeply committed and willing you are to become your higher version of self that you're holding in mind. And again, if you want a higher version of self, is just another way of saying your goals, the things you want to achieve in life. So in this video, I want to share with you some powerful mental models, clear frameworks, and timeless principles that will guide you on your journey, whether you're launching your agency from scratch or starting an existing one, or scaling an existing one, sorry. So here's what we're going to dive into. We're going to be covering understanding the agency business model and why I believe it's sort of the most simple and flexible business model on earth. I want to share with you the quantum address theory of creativity, which is a framework that I developed, not entirely, it is inspired. That is all about turning potentiality into actuality. It's a little bit of mindset work, and then choosing your service offering. So if you're in the place where you're just starting out, you have no idea what an agency is, or maybe you've been contemplating it, or you're doing some freelancing, or you're considering it and you're not sure what to offer. I'm going to walk through how to do that, how to pick a service offering that feels authentic to you. And then we're going to talk about the art of marketing, which is a fun conversation, which is all about how to attract and convert clients without even having a fancy website or a massive following on social media. And then finally, I want to end by talking about pricing. How do you go about pricing your services, and how do you increase your price over time as you become more of an expert in the service that you're offering? So by the end of this, my intention is that you'll have a high-level understanding of how to start an agency, how to scale an agency, some of the most important concepts related to that. So let's begin without further ado. And before we get into the tactical stuff, let's talk about what an agency actually is. Because once you start to actually understand what this business model is, it'll start to click for you. So at its core, an agency is a service-based business. And this is where you trade expertise and time and your systems that you've developed for client outcomes. So typically in an agency, you don't have any warehouses, you don't have any pallets, you don't have any inventory to manage because there's not necessarily a tangible product. It's just a matter of brains and process and trust between you and your client. So an agency is simply a business that provides a service to businesses or individuals. And I'm going to give you some examples here in a second, but that service that you're offering, it can live in almost any industry. Let me run down the list for you. Marketing, social media, health and wellness, IT, media production, creative work, consulting, recruitment, interior design, finance, crypto, gaming, lifestyle, architecture, real estate, farming, literally absolutely any industry you can think of, there are agencies in that industry that exist. And there are multi-million dollar and in some cases multi-billion dollar agencies that exist. Let me go a layer deeper because you might think, what does a crypto agency look like? There is some guys from New York I met that I did some consulting with when they were starting and scaling their agency. Very inspiring, two young men, and they were going to college for programming. And they were learning all about programming, of course, computer programming. And they started a sort of like a blockchain defense agency where before an ICO happens, before a crypto token sort of goes live, they'll review the code in the blockchain and they'll look for bugs to make sure that there's no possibility for a hacker to sort of come into the blockchain and steal a bunch of money from this specific network or whatever, because there's a huge issue in the blockchain community. And so they were sort of this agency that offered, the service of finding bugs. Super cool, right? And they were, I think at the time, doing somewhere between $40 to $50 or $60,000 a month. I think they're probably now well over 100. They're probably worth multi-millions of dollars. Cool. That's one example. You could start a gaming agency where you're literally helping people become better at World of Warcraft. That's not for me. I wouldn't do that. But there's a lot of people who really like video games out there. I don't know. That's not my thing. There's real estate agencies. I have an advertising agency. There's recruiting agencies. So anyways, the list goes on. I don't want to bore you to death. It's infinite. Almost anything you're passionate about or good at can become the foundation of your agency. That's why it's so beautiful, because I don't care what you are good at, you can probably turn it into an agency. So if you can solve a problem, create a result, or remove a headache, you have the sort of raw ingredients that make up a service-based business, which we can call an agency. Okay, so now you know what an agency is. Fantastic. So how does a service-based business actually work? Well, let's make this pretty practical. Here's the basic flow of how service-based business actually works. Firstly, you identify a specific problem worth solving. Okay, so for me, when I'm starting my agency, I see this opportunity of brands selling on Amazon. I see that these brands are having issues with their advertising and they want somebody to manage it. That was an example of me identifying a specific problem in the marketplace that felt like it was worth solving. Second, you design a repeatable method for solving it. Now, this is a little bit tricky because especially if you're like me when I'm 19 years old, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't really know how to create a repeatable method to solve this problem. So you're sort of in the experimental process of developing that repeatable method. Juan, so he also goes by Blanco. You can't see him. He's in the background. He has a really cool tour guide agency. So it doesn't have to be digital. It could also be in person, but there's tons of tour agencies out there. Right now we're filming this in Panama and there's some wonderful islands. There's an island called Isla Iguana. And it's a super cool island. There's like US bombs that were dropped on it. There's iguanas running all over the place. It's a nature reserve. The whales come there to do their mating and, birth their babies around the island. It's super cool. And so, Blanco is feeling that this is a special place. This is probably a place where I could take people and give them a really good experience, a sort of journey of experiencing the whales, experiencing going snorkeling with some cool fishes. This is a really cool experience. We actually did this at an agency birth meetup. No matter what your service-based business is, for Blanco's, if it's a tour guide agency, he needs to feel into, okay, well, what's an exciting process that I can take people through? Well, I'm going to take them to this island. I'm going to show them the nature. I'm going to take them snorkeling. This is a vibe. That's exciting. It's the same thing if I'm running a or just starting a marketing agency. I'm working with a brand, so I want to talk to the client. Tell me about your product. Tell me about, what are you trying to help people with? What does this product actually help people with? What are the primary benefits people receive when they sell this product? Okay, now I'm starting to understand it. Now let me go to the drawing board and come up with some ways that we can advertise this product. Let me find some keywords that we can bid on. I'm speaking a bit of advertising terminology, and this might not make sense to you. That's okay. The point is that number 2, you come up with repeatable method for delivering that service. And then you craft SOPs and templates and checklists for whatever that proven framework is because you've designed a specific vibe. Third, you package that framework and that method into a clear offer with a defined scope and an outcome. Okay, so what's the defined scope and what's the outcome? Well, very basic example of an agency business, a tour guide agency. The defined scope is we're going to go to this island. We're going to go look at some whales. We're going to go do some snorkeling. It's going to be 3 or 4 hours. It's $150 per person. That's the defined scope. For me and my advertising agency, it's, okay, listen, I'm going to manage the advertising for 5 of your products. You give me a budget of $50,000 a month. I'll manage that money for you. And my hope is that we can generate you $100,000 to $150,000 in sales, which gives you a 2 or roughly 3-to-1 return on your ad spend. Okay, cool. So we're defining the scope. How many products am I working with? What's the budget I'm working with? We're defining the ideal outcome. What's the experience that you're going to get, right? So very simple. 3 things: scope, timeline, price. And then the last one is outcome. 4 things. Not 3. And then there's engagement models. So with engagement models, when it comes to how you actually engage in a business with a client, in other words, how you charge for your service and exchange your energy for money. Because in a service-based business, you're not really trading a product. I'm not handing you a toothbrush and saying, hey, here, enjoy this toothbrush. I'm giving you my time. I'm giving you my expertise. It's a different form. It's more elusive, and it's sort of between the lines. And so how do you go about charging for that? Well, there's 3 core models plus a hybrid model, so 4, but there's 3 cores, and I'm going to share them with you. Each one has its own strengths and risks, and ideal timing depends on the seasons of your business and what type of business you have. So we'll walk through all of them, and you can feel into which one feels best for you, depending on the nature of your business. So the first one's very simple. It's the retainer model. This is where we have an ongoing monthly support where I'm delivering this service to you every month. And this is nice because it's predictable revenue. And to maintain a retainer for multiple years, which, in my agency I started, I had clients for multiple years paying me $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per month. It requires developing strong relationships and maintaining a clear scope and consistently delivering on the outcome, right? The second type of engagement that you can do is a project scope, or like a project or sprint. And this is where you have a fixed scope and timeline, and you have sort of clear outcomes on what's exactly going to be delivered at the end of this timeline. So I'll give you an example. A web design agency. I just worked with a designer who designed a landing page for me. I went to him. I said, listen, I have a budget of $1,000 to $1,500. This is what I want. It's a single landing page. He says, okay, cool. this is within my budget. I can do this for you. $1,500 is how much I'm going to charge you. It's going to take me 2 weeks. I know it probably took him like 3 hours, to be honest. He's this 15-year-old kid making a lot of money, but I loved it. He's great. And he did a really good job designing this landing page. And so that was an example of a project/sprint where he made $1,500. It was 2 weeks. It realistically only took him 4 hours of his time. Fantastic. So a lot of different types of agencies, they have these one-time engagements, or maybe the engagement happens again a year later, whatever. And then there's the third type, which is a performance rev share model, where this is where I sort of have skin in the game. Let's say that you come to me, you say, Taylor, I want you to help me with my marketing for my brand that I'm selling with this product on Amazon. I can spend $20,000 a month. I have that budget. You hand me the credit card. I go to Amazon and you tell me, as long as you can deliver a 2-to-1 ratio on ad spend, meaning as long as you can make me $2 for every $1 you spend, I'm going to share with you 5% of the revenue or 2% of the revenue or something like this. That's an example where you're sort of a performance-based model. By the way, there's infinite ways to cut the cookie when it comes to performance-based models. The example I gave you might have felt complex, just that's more so familiar. Revenue share, percentage of revenue or percentage of ad spend, that's typical in the marketing world. But if you're a UGC agency, if you're doing content creation, I might come to you and say, hey, look, I need help filming some content. Help me film a YouTube ad. So I need you to help me come up with the script, help me come up with the hook, help me come up with, do the lighting, do the camera shooting, post-production, editing, cool, whatever. And you might say, Taylor, I'm going to charge you $3,000 for this service. And I want 5% of the revenue that the ad generates for your business. Because realistically, I want to charge you $20,000, but I believe so much in the performance of this ad that I'm going to make for your business that I'd rather charge you less upfront and take a percentage of the performance. And this is cool because, when you come to somebody with a performance-based model, it's like sometimes you can approach people and say, I'm not even going to charge you $1. Let me work for you for free, or not for free, but let me work for you in a way where you only pay me if I get you results. And that makes it really easy to say yes to. So there's some pros and cons to these different models. And the final is a hybrid, which you already heard me kind of mention. This is where we have a sort of base retainer where, let's say it's $1,000 a month for my service. And then you have some performance incentives where it's like, if you achieve XYZ, you'll get a bonus of $500, or you'll get a bonus of like 5-10% of the profit, whatever. To be honest, if you're just starting your agency, do the retainer model, do the sprint project-based model. It's the easiest. Once you get really good, then you can do performance-based. So let's talk about why service-based businesses is such a powerful business to start. The agency model, which is a service-based business. Why is it so powerful to start? Well, one of the reasons I love the agency model is because it's so accessible. You don't need a huge amount of capital to get started. You just need a laptop and a calendar link. And then you need to be able to keep a promise and offer something. It's really that simple. And what's so cool is that you get really fast feedback because you're learning directly from clients. And as you perform your service for your clients, each time you do that, you get better and you get more feedback and you get, you're more able to sort of refine your offer in real time. And so you can build high leverage over time by turning custom work into repeatable SOPs, templates, and playbooks. See, in the beginning, it's very custom. And then over time, you start to realize that there's patterns emerging. Oh, well, hold on. It's actually, this happens every time. This is a repeatable pattern. So you see this repeatable pattern. You take somebody to the island, they have a great experience. And all of a sudden you realize, well, I could just do this for a lot of people. I work with a brand, I manage their advertising, and I realize, oh, there's a lot of people out there that need this help. So now I have an SOP, now I have a team in place, now I have repeatable systems, checklists, and Next thing you know, you're paying out $40,000, $50,000 a month in payroll, or 100,000, whatever. So if you manage people, scope, and time well, you can maintain what I like to call healthy margins that give your business real breathing room to grow and thrive. And that's a whole other thing that we could talk about for an hour, but we'll just leave it there. So shifting a little bit, I want to talk about 3 levers you'll always have to balance. And again, I'm just deepening into the agency business model here for you so that you can fully grasp this model. And then we'll go a little bit deeper into pricing and picking your service offering. But the 3 levers that you'll always be balancing, as I just sort of mentioned earlier, as you grow, is scope, which is what's included and not included in what you're offering for your agency. This is where you sort of define the partnership agreement. And then there's speed. How quickly are you going to be able to deliver it? So just some expectations on the timeline. That's sort of part of the partnership agreement that you form. And then there's the standard, which is sort of the quality of service that you want to deliver and that you sort of have to maintain in order for you to feel like this is worth whatever it is that you're charging. And as you get better at these 3 things over time, you increase the price of your service, which is something we'll go deeper in here shortly. And so how money maps to a service-based business. Okay, let's talk about the money aspect of a service-based business. Okay, from a high level, you're not actually selling hours, you're selling outcomes. And so you may have heard the famous saying, I don't buy a drill so that I can use a drill. I buy a drill for holes. I buy a drill to screw a nail into something, right? And so this is the whole concept of what you buy isn't necessarily for the thing itself, it's for the outcome that it delivers. When I buy a lunch somewhere at a really good restaurant, I'm not buying a sandwich just to look at it, right? Like I want to fill my belly. I want to get full. I don't want to be hungry. So you're selling outcomes, not hours. Don't get those two confused. A lot of people get tripped up. They start thinking like, well, this is how much I charge per hour. And it's like, no. Actually, yes, it's okay to put an hourly rate on your service. That's fine. But you want to be more clear on the outcome that you're providing and how valuable that is, and then charge more so on that. So behind the scenes, I have this cool thing, which is common in the business world. It's called effective hourly rate, EHR. And you can use this to sanity check your pricing, which again, we'll be talking about in the pricing section of this, but I just wanted to briefly talk about it here. But know that pricing is sort of like it's sort of like your anchor, and it should always be based upon the result you create, the risk that you remove, not the minutes on the clock. One more really good example. When you go to the dentist and the dentist pulls out your wisdom tooth. I went to the dentist recently, pulled out my wisdom tooth. It took 5 minutes because it wasn't impacted. It was perfectly there to pull it out. In the US, I think that costs somewhere between $500 to $1,000, somewhere in that range, but it takes 10 minutes. Okay, so you might look at that and think, well, I just paid $1,000 to get this tooth pulled out, but it only took 10 minutes. That makes no sense. You would never look at the dentist and say, can you make this at least 3 hours so I feel like you're charging me like a fair rate? That's not how it works. You want it to happen as fast as possible. You don't want to sit in the dentist for 3 hours and have this person yanking on your tooth pretending that they need to take 3 hours. If dentists did that, there'd be a lot of people, sort of like tilting their head, what's going on here? And then some other dentist would come along and he would do it in 5 minutes and everyone would praise him and think, oh my God, this guy's way better. I would pay actually 3 times as much to have it done in 5 minutes than to have it done in 3 hours. And that's the reality of it. Speed is such a value when it comes to business. So don't count the minutes on the clock. Don't count your hours. Charge by the outcome that you deliver. Key part of running an agency. And you protect your gross margin by matching scope to capacity and use SOPs to increase consistency without burning yourself or your team out. And the final piece to the sort of all the different elements that make up the agency model before we continue forward is the client journey, which is sort of the flywheel of your business. And when you do this right, your agency, it can compound and grow and grow and grow. And so the client journey sort of looks like this. You have the attraction process, the qualification process, the scope definition process, the proposal process, the onboarding process, the delivery process. And then once you've delivered the service, you're sort of reviewing the service work that you did, and the client is giving you feedback to decide whether or not your service will continue or it will grow and expand and the scope will increase, or maybe even it leads to the client referring you to somebody else. So attract, qualify, scope, propose, onboard, deliver, review, and then renew, expand, refer. And when you do this well, every client that you sign becomes a case study and a referral, which powers the next one. And it creates this super powerful domino effect where as the years go on and you serve more and more clients, you have more and more testimonials, you have more and more results, you have more and more people who said, hey, I worked with so-and-so, I worked with Blanco, I worked with Taylor. He was great at this. He helped me a lot. I recommend him. This is a super common thing where 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50% of the clients that you'll sign in your agency come from referrals, because word of mouth is a very powerful thing and it drives the growth for the majority of most businesses. So this is how agencies compound and become multi-million or multi-billion-dollar empires over the course of several decades. And it's how I've seen my own agency compound and grow and grow and grow. From nothing, just a little seed, little baby mustard seed. Little 19-year-old Taylor said, I'm going to start an agency. And then all of a sudden, there's this wonderful big mother tree. Okay. Boundaries is a super important thing. This is actually the final thing I want to touch on. Boundaries creates trust. And having a service-based business doesn't mean that you're just serving people and doing everything you can for them and burning yourself out in the process. You have to have healthy boundaries that create trust. And so healthy boundaries, like in your relationship with your significant other or with any of your friends, it's clear statements of work, clear statements around the communication cadence, revision rules, definitions of what done looks like. These things keep the relationship clean and it keeps your business healthy. Everybody's heard of these insanely toxic stories where this partner completely screwed over the other partner. They stole half the money in the bank or all the money in the bank account, or we paid this agency and they didn't deliver on what they said they were going to deliver on, or they overpromised and underdelivered. These things come from poor business boundaries. So you don't need to go through that. That's not fun. So if you remember nothing else, what I've shared with you about the agency model, I'm going to simplify it for you here. An agency is just a promise plus a process that consistently fulfills that promise. And if you dial those two things in, everything else gets easy and simpler and better. But if you've been following my journey for a while and you know who I am and you've seen some of my other content, you know I like to go a little bit deeper than just talking about business things, because I believe that behind the surface level strategy and tactics of business or whatever it is that we're talking about, there's a way of thinking. There's a mindset, there's a belief, there's a creative framework that shapes how those strategies come to life and come into existence. And for me, that framework is called the quantum address theory of creativity. So here we are, getting into quantum mechanics, as we also talk about starting and scaling an agency, but it's important. It's something that I've adopted and I absolutely love it with you. So I'm here to share it with you. So in quantum mechanics, it suggests that everything in the universe exists first as potential. I like to think of it as sort of this field of infinite possibilities, a place where everything you can possibly imagine sort of exists because it's a field of infinite potentialities. For example, you might think this is way out there, but this is just my belief. Take it or leave it. When I was broke, insecure, and 19 years old with no business experience whatsoever, I was holding in mind a version of Taylor that was financially free. He was in love, and he felt fulfilled, and he felt confident. But that was just an imaginary version of Taylor. But because I held that in mind, over time, that financially free version of Taylor came into existence. But the thing is that it actually existed in the field of infinite potentialities before it, what we can call, manifested into actualization, into reality, into actuality. So in this framework that I'm going to share with you, a thought, sort of this imaginary idea of who Taylor could be, it's not just an idea. It's not just some like figment of my imagination. It's not just some, I don't know. I think people that are overly logical and scientifical and whatever, they sort of think, this is just my brain. I'm holding a thought in my mind. That's all it is. I just have thoughts in my head. I just have this capacity to think. And that's all it is. It's just a thought. It doesn't mean anything else. A lot of people say ideas are useless or thoughts are useless. Well, it's actually more like an energetic blueprint that's encoded into the quantum field of infinite potential. And whether that blueprint dissolves and doesn't actually become true, or whether it materializes and becomes manifest, it depends on how we interact with that blueprint, with that thought form. And so one of the things that inspired this perspective of going deeper into quantum mechanics and understanding the quantum address theory of creativity were the experiments of, and I might be not pronouncing his name correctly, it's Masaru Emoto. I think he's from Japan. I'm not exactly sure, but he did some extensive research providing solid evidence in his book called The Hidden Messages of Water that the crystalline structure of water, it actually changes in response to how you speak to the water, or if you pray over the water, or the music that is around the water. So we're talking about the vibrations of words, prayer, or music. For example, he documented different crystal formations after the words he spoke. He basically spoke to the water. He said, "You disgust me." And then he spoke to another droplet of water, and he said, "Love and gratitude." And this is the difference. This is what it looks like between when you say those two things. This is a snapshot of the water. And he showed differences, of how the water looks when you play Mozart versus heavy metal. And again, I'm not presenting this as sort of, hey, look, this proves what I'm saying about how thought forms are more than just thoughts. It's just more as a perspective that began to help shape my understanding of the power of intention and energy and vibration. People say, oh, words don't mean anything. Well, if words can adjust the crystalline structure of water, there's probably something more to it than it just being a word, right? And so this led me to create a simple formula, a sort of metaphorical way to describe how something moves from potentiality to actuality. And it looks like this. So I'm going to share this with you. Potentiality multiplied by bracket focused intention plus emotional charge plus harmonic coherence bracket equals actuality. Now, I'm not trying to take you to calculus class. Okay, I actually barely graduated high school, as I said, and I was in the dumb class in math. The I don't know what it's called. There's like the tier 1 normal class, then there's like the AP advanced kids, but then there was that like dumb class, and I was in the dumb class. Which didn't make me feel the smartest when I was starting my business, especially because my business is all about numbers. But anyways, potentiality. Let's start with the first piece of this formula. This is simply the dream or the desire or the possibility that hasn't happened yet. Okay, so it's the goal that you're holding in mind, this thing that you want to achieve. And then actuality, which is the end of this formula, this is when it becomes real. This is when it turns into something that is manifest, something that is in reality, something that is tangible. You've achieved the goal, whatever it is that you've done. Okay, so very simple. We have a goal in mind, potentiality doesn't exist, and then we have actuality, which is something that has come into actualization. You've achieved the goal. And so the question for everybody on planet Earth is, well, how do I achieve my goals? And so these things in the brackets, that's where we get into achieving the goals. So let's go through these one by one. Focused intention. It's all about clarity. Okay, so a vague intention is like a weak signal, while a clear, detailed intention, it's like a strong broadcast. It's kind of like when you're listening to the radio and it's like it's kind of like you can't really, and then it's like, and then you can't really hear what the person's saying. And then all of a sudden you change the radio station to the perfect 102.3 and you can hear the broadcast perfectly. Okay, so where am I going with this? Well, imagine there's two people. Imagine there's Taylor and there's Blanco, two different people. And they have they have the same desire. They both want to buy a home. Now, let's say that Blanco describes his dream home in vivid detail. He knows the location, he knows the architecture, he knows how the home smells when he walks into the house, and he knows the color of the paint. He can describe it to you like he's already living there. That is what we call a very strong, energetic blueprint. That's what we call strong, focused intention in the CADIC formula. Versus, let's say Taylor, on the other hand, not the brightest kid, let's say. Let's say he has an intention of, he also wants a home, but he just wants a home. That's it. I just want a home. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how big it is. I don't know what the color is. I don't know what it smells like. I don't know any of that. I just know that I want a home. Well, there's nothing wrong with wanting a home, but the problem is that my focused intention is very weak. And it's kind of like the blueprints to a house, right? When you hire an architect to develop the blueprints to your house, you don't want to see a blueprint that looks like a square with a triangle on it. That's not what you want. If your architect comes to you and brings you a square with a triangle on top of it, you should probably fire him and not work with him. Instead, you want an architect who comes to you with this wildly detailed document of all the perfect measurements. I mean, it's crazy how detailed you have to be when it comes to architecture and designing blueprints, right? It's the same thing when it comes to your life. It's the exact same thing. But too many people, they don't know what they want in life, and they don't ever design a blueprint because they don't even think they have the possibility to ask for it. So instead, they're just going through life like, oh man, I'm doing my best. I paid my rent this month, or yeah, I made another payment to my student loans, and life is tough. And they're just doing their best to get by. And that's the average person. The average person is just doing their best to get by. And they feel like they don't have the time, the energy, or the space to develop a vision of what the best version of their life actually could be. So, focused intention is about having a strong and clear vision of what you actually want from life. One more analogy before we leave focused intention. People that don't have focused intention, it's sort of like they go to the airport, they walk up to the kiosk, they hand over their credit card and their passport, and they tell the lady behind the counter, they say, just give me a ticket. And the lady looks at you, and if it's a reasonably sane woman or man behind the counter, they're going to look at you and say, where are you going? And if you look at them and say, anywhere, just give me a ticket, they're probably going to think you're insane. But this is how it is for most people. They approach life in a way where they don't really know where they're going. They don't really have a clear, focused intention or vision of where they want to go. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about focused intention. We're talking about having a clear destination. When you go to the airport, I'm going to Los Angeles. Give me a ticket at 3 p.m. today. And I want business class seats. And I want this drink as soon as I sit down. I mean, that you can get that specific when you fly. Or whatever it is, doesn't matter. The point is you have focused intention. Okay. It's really powerful when you have this because it's sort of the foundation of life. I think too many people are sort of trying to skip this and they think, well, I just need to make money. I just need to get my bank account up. I just need to go to school, get a degree. Blah, blah, blah. They don't even think about what they actually want to create in life. We can go on and on about this for 10 hours. Moving on. Step 2 in this legendary key formula called CADIC, the quantum address theory of creativity. Emotional charge. Because you can hold in mind a beautiful home and you can have an incredible blueprint. You can have the best blueprint in the world. But guess what? It doesn't mean anything if you don't go and build the home, right? You need to actually put in the work, go buy the materials, hire the people, start putting the bricks on top of each other. You gotta paint the walls. You gotta put in the roof. Okay, so that's pretty obvious. Have you ever seen an abandoned construction site? Probably you have. The plans were drawn. They had a project in mind. They had the blueprints. They started working on it. But eventually what happened? They lost emotional charge. They ran out of energy. They abandoned the project. And I see this as a metaphor for goals we once felt passionate about, but then we abandoned them because, I don't know, our emotional charge was lost. It's like we lost motivation, you could say. So the emotional charge is sort of like the voltage behind your intention. It's the power source. It's the battery. And if you have a weak charge, it's like having a dim light bulb. But if you have a strong charge, it's like you're a lighthouse. You're just blasting light into this infinite ocean when it's pitch black. And you can see that light for miles and miles and miles. So it's a strong emotional charge. So it's very important that once you have a clear, focused intention, a clear blueprint for what you want, you maintain your emotional charge. Now you might say, well, okay, Taylor, I get it. How do I do that? How do I maintain motivation? Well, that's probably a 9-hour video maybe, but I'll try to do my best to make it in 30, 60 seconds. I think first and foremost that when you have a clear blueprint that you absolutely love and you feel wildly passionate about, I think that the emotional charge will always be there because you should never give up on your dream. But sometimes in life you mature and the dream changes. That's fine. The dream can change. But you should never give up on the dream. Ever. The dream can change, but never give up on the dream. So when you have a powerful dream that's clearly defined, I think the emotional charge is always there. I think it's only when you actually give up and you say, I can't do this. I'm not good enough to do this. I don't have what it takes. that's when you've lost. You've sort of died in the video game. And you become an NPC in the Matrix, for lack of better words. So, the third part of this formula, very important. It's harmonic coherence, which I think of as the alignment between your goals and your inner world. And this one's a bit out there. Some people are going to be like, oh, I don't know about this one, Taylor, but we're going to get into the subconscious mind. And Carl Jung, who so famously said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. That's a powerful quote that sort of gets into what we're about to talk about when it comes to harmonic coherence. So there's 3 layers of consciousness that I consider when talking about coherence. The first layer is the most sort of basic. It's the personal layer. And this is related to your own thoughts, your own emotions, your identity, your belief. Okay. Second layer is the collective consciousness. This is the shared beliefs and cultural currents that you're part of in the world, right? There's movements that are collective movements. Christianity, Hinduism, religions are examples of really big cultural movements. But there's also simple movements of people that speak Spanish, people that speak English, people that speak Japanese. These are also parts of cultural currents that you're a part of. You'll see trends on social media. Those are also sort of cultural collective currents. So these are sort of shared. The examples I give you maybe necessarily aren't the best, because the way I like to think of collective consciousness is the shared beliefs. So religion's probably the best example because people are believing in this. We'll go deeper into that, and I'll try to cover it a little bit better here shortly. But the third layer is the universal layer, which is the broader, more spiritual layer of reality, where we can call it God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. We're not going to be really touching on that in this video, and that's pretty out there. But let's just focus on the personal layer. So imagine your personal field, your aura, is like your vessel, your body. It's sort of like an instrument. If your conscious goals are out of tune with your subconscious beliefs, they clash. Good example. Let's say I consciously have this goal of financial freedom. I want to make more money. But subconsciously, I feel like money is the root of all evil, and I detest the wealthy class because I hate them for how much money they have. This is internal resistance. This is my subconscious belief system completely lacking coherence with my conscious goals. That is called low harmonic coherence, and it really messes with your capability to achieve your goals. And as I said earlier, when Carl Jung famously said this, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And I've found that to be true in my own journey. And I go much deeper I'm going to plan to go much deeper into this stuff in future videos, because I feel like I'm only really scratching the surface, but I hope that you're feeling it. I feel it when I'm sharing it with you, but I hope you're feeling it on your end. By the way, I'll do my best to respond to all the comments in the comment section. So if something doesn't make sense, just put it in the comments. I'll try to respond. It might take me a week or two. And I'd love to try to get back to you and help you with that. But let's keep moving, and let's go move into more of the business side of things. But to summarize, this formula isn't, it kind of is based on physics and quantum mechanics, but it's just a framework. Think of it as a framework that I like to use to describe how focus, emotion, and alignment, harmonic coherence, shapes our ability to bring ideas into reality. Okay, and the more clear you are on what you want to create and how you charge up your emotions to it and align your personal beliefs with what you want to create and the emotional charge that you have, the more magnetic your field becomes and the more likely you are to achieve the goal, to go from potentiality to actuality. Because even I, as a broke, insecure 19-year-old, I just focus on this vision of becoming financially free. And as I focused on this vision, my life, it began to change, began to transform slowly but surely over time. Now let's shift into becoming a specialist. One of the first practical lessons my mentor, Sam Evans, taught me when I was starting my agency was the power of specialized knowledge. You need to pick a niche, some form of specialized service and unique segment of the market that you genuinely care about in order to sort of find what we can call service market fit and get your business off the ground, get your agency off the ground. So a niche is simply a combination of what service you offer and who you offer it to. Okay, so for example, someone might offer marketing, which is very general. Like, oh, I have a marketing agency. What do you do? I help businesses with their marketing. Or you could get a little bit more specific and you could say, I have a digital advertising agency. Or you could get even more specific and say, I'm a specialist in Amazon advertising. You could get even more specific and say, I have a service where I specialize in Amazon advertising for brands that are doing over at least $1 million per year on the platform of Amazon. That's, of course, how I started. And that was the niche that I started in many years ago. So the more specialized you get, the clearer your positioning and stronger your blueprint becomes, your sort of focused intention. And the more clear you get, the more resonant people feel with what you're actually offering. Because again, if I go into the world and I say, oh, I'm a marketing agency and I meet a brand on Amazon that does $5 million a year, they're probably going to look at me and think, oh, well, you can't actually help me. But if I position myself as I'm an expert specifically in this thing that is very specific called Amazon advertising, and I work with brands that do this much in revenue, when people find out about me somehow through the content that I post, through me DMing them or reaching out to them, they're like, whoa, that's exactly what I need. I need that. That's for me, right? And that energy of that's for me is what you want to create when you go and pick a niche. So it shouldn't be broad. It should be pretty specific. So if you already have skills or passions, that's a huge advantage. But if you're starting at zero, like I was when I was 19, picking a niche, it can feel pretty overwhelming. It's kind of like when you're like a kid in grade 3 and the teacher's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's like, I don't know. I wasn't the kid that was like, I want to be a doctor. Like, I want to be a policeman. I was like, I don't know. I was like overwhelmed by that question. So it can feel like that sometimes if you're in that position. And that's how I felt. So I have this simple framework that I use. It's the 3 Ps, which I beautifully stole from a creator who I can't fully remember his name, but I give credit to him through my mind's eye right now as I'm sharing this with you. It's passion, proven skill, and pain. So passion, pick something you genuinely love. It's very simple. That's one avenue that you can take when it comes to picking a niche. Second thing, proven skill. Pick something you're actually already good at. Very simple. That also works. Pain, pick something you've struggled with and you've overcome so you can help others do the same. Let me give you an example of pain. Claudia, my beautiful partner, she had tremendous issues with skin. She had awful acne, and it was related to gut health issues. She healed that through healing her gut, through changing the foods she was eating, the workout that she was doing. She did a lot of work, and when she made these optimizations, all of a sudden her skin looked incredible. And she has very good skin. And that's a huge thing when you have terrible acne on your face. It's like little volcanoes erupting everywhere. It's like, what is going on? It doesn't make you feel good. There's a lot of pain associated with being somebody that has terrible acne. So if you've gone through that journey of healing that, guess what? You have a business. You have a potential agency. You can offer, some form of thing related to helping people overcome acne through helping them optimize their gut. Again, it doesn't mean immediately you can go into the world and just like start the business. You could do that, but maybe you want to do a little bit deeper research and think, okay, well, this is a cool idea. I could do this because I've solved this for myself, right? So those are the 3 Ps. I just gave you an example for one of them, but the other 2 are pretty simple and pretty basic. So for me, I remember being in my childhood bedroom trying to pick a direction. And I'm trying to feel into what feels passionate because I have no skills. I have no proven skills. Barely graduated high school. Kind of felt useless. And I felt like I didn't really overcome any tremendous pains in my life. So passion was the one where I was like, I'm just going to focus on this. And the word marketing kept coming up in my mind's eye and my meditation and my contemplation process that I was going through. It's like marketing. It's like, okay. Felt like a whisper from God. And I asked myself, would I enjoy learning marketing? And that moment changed my life because I went down the rabbit hole of, different types of marketing. There's a million different types of marketing that you can do. And it was starting to inspire me. I was getting into this place where I was feeling like, whoa, okay, I'm feeling some resonance with this. But Sam, my first mentor that I mentioned earlier, he gave me powerful advice that aligned with everything I was learning. He said, being a specialist is far more powerful than a generalist. So he said, don't just be a marketer, choose something specific. And so when I was looking, I was sort of scanning the marketplace, I was scanning the Safari, I was looking at all of the different options of marketing that were available to me. I saw that there was this platform called Amazon emerging. And it was this thing that sold books. I didn't even know they sold anything else. I thought it was just a book selling platform. But it turns out they sell lots of things, and it turns out they have an advertising platform where they're spending about $1 billion a year. It's a part of their business where they made about $1 billion a year at that time when I was considering marketing. Now, Google's ad platform was like 100 billion or something per year. So Amazon was this tiny little speck of dust when you compared it to the other platforms where brands in the world or people in the world were spending their money through advertising. But that tiny little speck felt like it had a lot of potential. It was very specific. There wasn't really many people doing it. It felt like a blue ocean, if you're familiar with that analogy. So my agency that I started would help brands on Amazon grow through, better advertising. So let's quickly contrast the difference between a generalist and a specialist. I want to give you some actual examples. So I already gave you the example of I help businesses with marketing versus I help brands doing 7 figures annually grow with better Amazon advertising. That's generalist, specialist. The second is obviously much stronger positioning. When you position yourself as a specialist, you naturally create a knowledge gap between you and your potential clients. And this gap, it builds trust and perceived expertise, even when you're young and you're just starting. For example, I was just a teenager and I looked like a teenager, and learning one very specific skill, that one specific skill that I learned of Amazon advertising, when you put me in front of successful brand owners who have businesses that are doing millions of dollars per year, if I'm positioned as a specialist in this thing, they're not looking at my age thinking, he's too young. They're thinking, whoa, he's a specialist in this thing? I'm not a specialist in this thing. Sure, I have this business that needs that thing to run, but I don't just specialize in that. I run the whole business, and there's so much to do when it comes to running the whole business. It'd be really nice if I had somebody who just specialized in that one thing, right? That's the power of positioning. There's a psychological effect. And so I appeared as a valuable expert because there's a gap, right, between my client, potential client, and me and my value that I provide. Now let's address imposter syndrome again and bring this back because it's real. And running a multi-million-dollar company, even when you're doing that, imposter syndrome still shows up at different levels. And the best way I've found to overcome it is this beautiful understanding that confidence comes with competence. I stole that quote from, I think it was Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger. It's so beautiful. Confidence comes with competence. And so the more skilled you get, the more confident you become. And so when you're starting out, you shouldn't really expect to feel very confident. That's okay. That's normal. When I started, I had no skills. I went to YouTube, Google, and I dove in deep for a week and I went down the rabbit hole. How do I do Amazon advertising? That's what I did. I kept learning, I kept applying, I kept iterating, and slowly, as I got more clients and more testimonials and more hours put in delivering my service, my competence grew, and therefore my confidence grew. So imposter syndrome it doesn't just disappear overnight the moment you achieve your goals or build this very successful business. There's always, if you're sort of a growth-oriented person, there's always a new version of self that you want to step into that's even more powerful than your current version. You want to become this. And the gap between where you are and what you want to become, depending on how big that gap is, determines how big the imposter syndrome is, right? But having the simple understanding that confidence comes with competence, really, it just, at least for me, it sort of relaxes me and makes me feel like, okay, I don't need to have this all figured out. I'm going to get over here just one little step at a time. So a strong mindset and frameworks like the quantum address theory, it's really helped me stay my course as I go one little step at a time. So let's touch on the marketing fundamentals. We've touched on finding a niche, sort of picking your service offering. And the next question becomes, well, how do you become magnetic and find and attract your clients and position yourself in a way where people want to work with you? They want your thing that you're offering. Because one of the worst things in the world is like, you have this thing that you want to offer, but then nobody wants it. Which that can be good feedback, but it's also pretty devastating for the human ego. So for me, marketing is best understood very simply as the art of attracting and directing attention. So on a high level, marketing is about finding where people's attention is and then guiding that attention toward your offer or service. And so if what you offer resonates with them, they become your customers, your clients, your fans, and ideally their lives improve because of your service and because they trusted to work with you. They trusted you. Now, I know some people feel that marketing is manipulative, and yes, there are companies that abuse marketing and push low quality products that are not in your best interest to use, sort of like snake oil. But what we're talking about here is not manipulation. It's learning how to ethically attract attention so you can genuinely help people. It's sort of like some people think money is evil. No, it's not evil. It's how you use it. You can use money to build weapons of mass destruction, or you can use it to save millions of lives by advancing medical technology. It's like a knife. You can cut vegetables. You can kill somebody. It's so contextual to how you use it. And so marketing is the exact same thing. It's a powerful skill and you need it to build a successful business, to earn income. It's that simple. So think of a traditional brick and mortar business. They choose a location with good foot traffic and put up a clear sign to attract people inside. Now, online marketing is the same principle. It's in the digital world. Your marketing is in many ways the signal you broadcast into the world. And the clearer and more consistent that signal is, the more people it draws in, right? And so there are two main ways to approach marketing. There's inbound, and then there's outbound. Inbound marketing is when you attract clients by creating valuable content for them. This video is a good example of inbound marketing. I'm sort of gaining goodwill by sharing this information, putting this out there for free into the world. So YouTube videos, email newsletters, a blog, going on stage and speaking at an event, writing a book. Well, a book is a product that you'd sell, but maybe giving away a book for free, like a digital book, I guess you could say. All of these things are sort of like throwing a net out into the ocean and waiting for fish to sort of swim in it over time. So inbound is a process of magnetism. It's sort of like, again, throwing a net into the ocean, waiting for fish to swim in. Outbound marketing is different. This is when you actively reach out to potential clients through things like cold email, cold DMs, paid advertising. It's like spotting a fish and I almost said throwing a spear. That would have been, yeah, you can do that too, but it's like going spear fishing. You're looking for a fish and you're waiting for that moment to find the fish and pull the trigger. Maybe not the best example because you're not literally hunting, but it's a little bit like that. And when I was starting out, I used a hybrid approach. So I did both things. For me, when I was starting out, trying to get my first few clients, I posted as much valuable content as I could online in Facebook groups, actually. Facebook was pretty popular 7 or 8 years ago. And I also directly reached out to clients. So I found clients, potential clients on LinkedIn. I also shared posts on LinkedIn that got some good engagement and helped attract good leads and good potential clients that eventually worked with our business. But other things that I did was sending cold emails. Like I'd try to find somebody's email and send them an email and say, hey, I like your brand. I think I can help you. It's that simple. So I'd send a DM through LinkedIn, a cold email. You could even do physical mail. That's something some people do. Knock on doors. These are all examples of outbound marketing. Okay, so outbound is more like going out into the world and you're finding the person. My first client actually came through inbound marketing. They saw one of my posts. My second and third and fourth clients, they came from outbound marketing. I directly messaged them on LinkedIn. And because of this hybrid approach between inbound and outbound marketing, within about 6 months, my agency was generating about $20,000 a month in revenue. Now, this is just my personal journey. I'm not trying to tell you that you should expect this result for yourself. This is not a guarantee, but I'm sharing with you my journey and I'm showing you what's possible when you sort of blend these two forms of marketing. So a common question that I get, just to shift gears a little bit, is, well, do I need a website to get started? And the truth is that when you're starting your agency, you don't really need a fancy website. Sometimes that can be good. Like if you're going to be a web designer, you should probably have a good website, right? But all you really need is a simple calendar booking tool so people can schedule calls with you, because a phone call is the process that you go through when you sign a client. You have to talk to them. That's a whole other thing. You can get really nervous and self-conscious when it comes to talking to clients. I was very nervous, very self-conscious on my first initial phone calls with clients where we were talking about potentially working together. You can only imagine 19-year-old Taylor like, So once you've signed some clients though and you have some testimonials, then I recommend investing in a basic website to showcase your service more professionally and the testimonials and the results that you have. It's helpful. It's just like having a good physical storefront. It's professional. But in the beginning, it's really not necessary. Your social profile on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok, on whatever platform X that you're using, that's your website. That when you start out, that's your website. And funny enough, when I actually started my agency, my website was terrible. I thought it was so important, and actually nobody cared. Every client I signed in those initial first 6 months, it came through, like I said, people seeing my content on social media, or I directly reached out to them, and then they booked a call with me and we talked. I doubt any of them even looked at my website. Okay. Pricing your service. Something that causes a lot of people imposter syndrome when you're starting out, it can feel intimidating to decide what to charge. I want to share with you a very, I won't even call it a simple framework or a simple formula because it feels complicated for some people. So don't worry, I don't want you to overthink this, but it's something simple called EHR, effective hourly rate. So if we take bracket revenue minus expenses, bracket divided by time invested, this gives us our hourly rate. So if you're brand new, you might not be earning $150 an hour. You might want to start out on the lower end and position your service in a way where UGC is a good example. If you're not familiar with user-generated content, it's just basically somebody who makes a piece of content for somebody else. So if I'm going to offer this as a service, content creation as a service, I'm going to, let's say I'm talking to Blanco and I'm like, hey, Blanco, I'm going to offer you content creation as a service. Blanco says, cool, I need 3 pieces of content. How much are you going to charge me? I'm going to feel into this. Okay, let's say I'm a complete beginner. I don't really have any clue what I'm doing. A very fair hourly rate, EHR, would be about $50 an hour starting out. That's actually pretty high for a beginner to be making $50 an hour because minimum wage is like 10 to 15 bucks. But you have to keep in mind that we're positioning ourselves as an expert, which gives us the ability to charge a little bit higher because we're specializing in something. So let's say $50 an hour is a fair price to charge. But if I'm good at what I'm doing, if I have testimonials and case studies, I should be charging at least $150 an hour for my time, minimum. I think that's the minimum you should be charging if you're good at what you're doing. Ideally, you want to get up to 300, 500. And we won't get into why it's really powerful when you get into 300 and 500, but if you want to build a multi-million-dollar company, that's where you should be striving. Ideally, the more, the more efficient you are, the better. But again, you have to keep in mind that you're not selling an hourly rate. I'm not going to go to Blanco and say, hey, okay, cool, I'll give you 3 pieces of content and it's going to cost you $150 because it takes me $50. I charge $50 an hour and it takes me about an hour to make each piece of content. That's never how you should approach the conversation with the potential client. I don't even want to share the hourly rate in this scenario with this business model. There's times where you should share the hourly rate, and we won't get into that. But in this scenario, and generally, I recommend that you're just imagining, well, what is this outcome worth? Because we're selling outcomes, not time, right? In the agency business model, back to the fundamentals. Well, there's a potential that these 3 pieces of content that I make for Blanco blows up on social media, and whatever it is that he's using this content for, maybe it's selling a product, maybe it's selling a service, maybe it's just getting more subscribers on his YouTube channel. That might, if one of these pieces of content does 10, 15, 20, 50,000 views, that might be worth $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for him. Okay, that might be worth $10,000 for him. I don't even know. It depends, depends on who you're creating content for and how good you are at creating content. And so I have to try to come up with a form of pricing that is centered around the outcome, but also keeping in mind how much energy it's going to take me to create that outcome. And so it's this weird, nuanced balance between, well, how much energy is it going to take me? And how much, what outcome is this person going to receive? Okay. So back to the example. I know it's only going to take me 3 hours to make 3 high quality pieces of content. In this example, if I'm an expert, I'm at least probably going to charge somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000 for this content for Blanco. Because when I look at his business, I think to myself, yeah, okay, his business is already earning, $100, $200, $500,000 a year in revenue. This is high quality content. I think this content's probably going to make him $500, $1,000, $2,000 a year, maybe. I don't know, because content over time can grow and get more views and get more attention. And so I'm trying to price more so on the outcome than on my hourly rate. But I do still want to consider, well, how long is it going to take me to make the content? Because if I charge $2,000, but it takes me 2,000 hours, you don't want to make $1 an hour, right? So very simple, very straightforward. EHR is a pretty powerful thing, and you can apply this model to your business, and it becomes really powerful when you start hiring people and whatever. So I've seen many agency owners who have the skills to justify a $150, $300, $500 an hour EHR, but they're charging rates closer to $30, $50 an hour, usually because their mindset is off. It's not a problem of they don't have the skills. It's because they undervalue their time, or they undervalue the outcome that they're delivering. And they're holding on to some weird limiting beliefs or fear centered around, their service offering. And as someone who's grown an agency from zero to multi-millions of dollars, I can tell you that, understanding your pricing early is key to sustainable growth, and making sure that you adjust your pricing over time to go up and up and up. So, a closing wonderful moment to end this. I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and energy with me. This was quite the training. We went all over the place on the agency business model, and I hope that it's given you some clarity, some inspiration, and a sense of possibility for what's possible when creating an agency. And if you want to go deeper into this path, you can check out my school group. It's called Agency Birth, and there's a link in the description of this video. And I teach more stuff related to this and help people start and scale agencies at all different levels. If you want to check that out, fantastic. I'd love that. Otherwise, if you want to just comment and deeper understand something, comment. I'm going to respond to you. I'm going to do my best to help you on your journey. That's the purpose of this channel. And if you enjoy that, you can also hit the subscribe button. That'd be cool too. Okay, I'll see you again soon. And I send you my love. Ciao.